Well, I hope you had a good weekend, whenever your last weekend was. I certainly did. For mine was a Marillion weekend. Hey, welcome to the channel with me, JSB. If you've been here before, you'll probably know that Marillion are my favourite band, and that when I arrived in the UK back in 2010, on a 2-year visa no less, my main goal in life was seeing them as often as possible. Now, it could be said I haven't achieved many of my aims in life, but at least I've smashed that one. 2 years turned into 15 and counting, gosh. But I've only let up on that goal very slightly over the years and have maybe had 2 years in that 15 where I've not seen them at least once. I've done okay. Anyway, from the 2011 conventions in Port Zealand and Leamington, I've attended at least one weekend/convention on each, generally biannual cycle, barring pandemics. But this would prove to be my first UK Marillion weekend since 2013. It's also my first time with the new 2 nights only format, which really just proved we've been spoiled all these years when we got 3 back-to-back nights, often totaling over 7 hours of music. Yeah, I know. Non-fans find this hard to believe, frankly, while actual fans, myself included, maybe began to take that a little bit for granted. Anyway, this was also my first time at De Montfort Hall in Leicester, or indeed in Leicester at all, for any reason. And that brought things nicely full circle for me. I'm going to start on another loop of that circle, but what I mean was it was the site of the 1990 Rocksteady broadcast that became the basis of the From Stoke Row DVD, which was essentially the gig that turned me from Marillion into full-fledged fans. So you could say it was about time. And aside from being too warm for those of us with a tendency to overheat easily, it's a lovely venue with a decent-sized standing room only floor with 3 sides of seats all around us upstairs. So yes, 2 nights of 2-hour plus shows with no overlap between them. Again, this is something we're so used to, but it really is astonishing, even if, as we shall see, it possibly adds to the not everything goes quite as planned nature of these events. I hadn't checked out the set lists from previous weekends this year, and this was the 6th in a run of 9 that they're doing this time around, which I think is the most ever. But I had leaned that night one would be most of Marbles. Therefore, after they opened with a fair chunk of Marbles and H announced that they'd be playing most of Marbles, I wasn't either surprised or disappointed. Speaking of H, since I last saw him a mere 18 months ago, I guess, he has belatedly embraced the notion of aging naturally, gracefully, and is now fully white-haired, which takes a bit of adjusting to when you've been used to his long flowing dark locks all these years. But by the end of the night, I'd come to accept this new wizened old man fronting my favourite band. I jest, of course. Hair colour aside, there's nothing to suggest H's actual age when it comes to him performing on stage. Or maybe there was, because he did seem at a few points like he'd just been let out of the care home. His poor guitar tech was left standing awkwardly with guitars and other things to pass to him or take back off him, with H apparently oblivious on more than one occasion to all of this. But he sounded great as ever. So Marble setlist dominance aside, there were also a few surprises, including at least one to some of the band, as the loop for You're Gone was sprung early to a roar of approval from the crowd and a look of what the fuck from various other band members in Mark's general direction. But in fairness to Mark, if H had given Cannibal Surf Babe, which was the song they were actually meant to be playing, a more significant intro than this is a song, maybe he'd have remembered which one to play. Anyway, that was just one of those things that happens at a live gig. And if I had a real quibble with the set, and I do, and it really is just a quibble, if you're not going to play all the marbles, and fair enough, there's a lot of it, ditch the damage. It's very much what I would call the afraid of sunrise to Genie's afraid of sunlight, if you know what I mean. And if you don't, ask me and I'll tell you. Anyway, a goodly chunk of marbles and a crowd-pleasing encore of Sugar Mice and Man of a Thousand Faces certainly made for a more than decent night. Not one of the life-changing experiences they've sometimes managed to deliver, but when you've seen a band 40 plus times, not every single gig can find its way into your personal top 5 or top 10. Math just doesn't work that way. That said, Night 2 came close to doing that, with pretty much the greatest set list ever, until the encores, which were just okay. And it wasn't really marred by a surprising number of very sloppy moments, with oddly Rothers as the main culprit throughout. I mean, I guess everyone's allowed an off night once every 40 years or so, and even when he's somehow managing to play an entire solo, what's the technical term for it? Wrongly? It still sounds better than most people at their peak, so what can you say? And speaking of Rothers, meet Rothers. Yes, it's a stuffed cat who bears little resemblance to the great man, but having made the terrible error of marrying a fellow with one similarity to H, i.e., he's allergic to cats, um, he's the best I'm allowed. Mm, he's cute, isn't he? I'm not mad, I promise. Or am I? Anyway, the main set consisted entirely of tunes from the EMI years, including a decent smattering of offerings from the Fischera, with Slange to Open, a superb script for a Jester's Tear, and most of the best bits of Side 1 of Misplaced Childhood. I think making this the first time I've even heard them do Kaylee in the UK. All that was wonderful, but it was the space that went over the best of all, even getting those upstairs seated types out of their seats for a well-deserved standing ovation. And believe you me, when you've got a Marillion fan sat down, it is very difficult to move them. So when I replay this gig in my head, I'll probably end it at The Great Escape, as the encores were, as I say, okay, but nothing to what had come before. And personally, I found them doing just the final 5 minutes of Care very odd indeed. Just doing the final few minutes of the levers, on the whole, generally does work quite well, and is always a relief when you don't have to suffer the whole messy thing. Controversial. Though that did actually follow the 5 minutes of Care that we got, and was, has to be said, hilariously bungled, with no two band members or even two hands of an individual band member seemingly on the same page during the, ironically enough, we come together bit. Luckily, they did manage to pull it back together just in time for the obligatory confetti cannon moment, and we managed to end on the joyous note that I'm sure was the intention. So, emerging from said second night into the refreshingly cool Leicester air, it was evident that the post-show feeling was one of general ecstasy among the fan base, and all the faults were acknowledged. They weren't deemed anything more than glitches, and you know, even though they've cut the weekends back from the 7 hour marathons of yore, 4 and a bit hours of hardly basic music is still a challenging prospect to present. So it would be both miraculous and probably a little bit soulless had everything gone completely smoothly. So even if the band weren't quite on peak form across both nights, they were still satisfying most customers very nicely. Thank you very much indeed. But wait, there was more, except earlier. By which I mean we had support acts. Well, sort of. On night 1 we did, and if you are a member of the wider public, this may have made sense to you, as it was fellow 80s one-hit wonders, Cutting Crew, or at least 3 of them, and very good they were too. I think more than a few people were surprised by just how good they were, even if the new songs weren't quite as amazing as Nick Van Eed had promised. And mentioning one being inspired by his niece being born in Auckland, New Zealand, isn't enough to get a cheer from me. You had to work harder than that, Nick. Anyway, the band sounded tight and the harmonies and playing were excellent. And that big song is still a great 80s pop classic for a reason, even if nobody really remembers the title of it properly. You know what? First person to say the title of that song correctly in the comments will win my love and gratitude. Anyway, very enjoyable, and certainly, sadly, a lot more enjoyable than the following night's Q&A session, which I would say is a formally fun format, alliteration, but it seems to have run its course now. It started badly with Lucy running through the list of countries represented by fans, with a few too many boos in amongst the genuine cheers. I think the booing was supposed to be funny, but it absolutely wasn't, and in fact, by the time we got to the USA, it had become outright nasty. There was no call for that whatsoever. Now, New Zealand was on the list, but wasn't put there by me because it was done on Facebook, which I have no connection to in the Marillion world, so I didn't cheer to claim it. As I just said to Nick, you can't get me to cheer just by mentioning NZ. Anyway, frivolity might have been expected to follow, but for the most part, the band were often not even bothering to hide their disinterest and sometimes outright disdain for the whole deal. At one point, they even appeared to be on the verge of breaking up in front of our eyes. I think it was Mark who actually commented to that effect, and it did seem a little close to the bone. Hopefully, there's nothing to that, but in any case, it's available online, and if I remember, I may even have put the link in the description for you to go and have a look for yourself if you are so inclined. A couple of bright spots did emerge from that, including that they really, really are intending to, come the end of summer, get back in the studio and work hard on the next Marillion album. It's still going to be a bit of a wait, though, folks, eh? Aside from all that music, there were other things going on in Leicester that were connected. Many gigs by the various Marillion tribute bands, but to be honest, I'm at the point now where I'm happy with just the main band for as long as they're able to continue. Uh, I'll move on to the tributes at a point later in time when they're all that I can get, I guess. I did, however, buck my personal trend and actually attend a social event. I know, as a small gathering of old-fashioned folk, not to mention all the other lovable oddities, who still post on the band's forum. Come on, you Malfers! We all got together for brunch and to talk utter rubbish. Yes, it's not just me who does that, and in fact, I'm not even the best at it. Yay for the Molf anyway, and it was extra nice to catch up with most of them post gig for a full weekend debrief over a pint as well. So cheers to Bryn and Big Job and Axter and Holman, Chris and Neil, Mike, the interloper. He's not actually from the Molf, but we let him hang out with us anyway because we're cool like that. Anyway, yeah, thanks to those lads for being at one or both of those events. It really is about more than the music with this band, even if the music itself would be more than enough. So great stuff all round, and yeah, it might not have been the greatest of the great Marillion Weekends I've ever attended, but it was damn fine just the same, and I'll be there for the next one, God willing. So thanks for joining me for my reminiscences of a fine weekend, and there's more related stuff floating around my head about now, so I'll merely say thanks for watching and bye for now, but I hope not for long.
Acting is reacting. This does not mean acting again.